Hi everyone, my name is Nyemade, and I am NAMI's Delaware's Diversity and Equity Fellow. Each month I come on and I have interviews with different people about different areas of focus related to mental health. If it's a theme month, we sort of try to pick a theme that goes with that month. And for May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So we did a series of videos called You Are Not Alone. They were actually such a hit that we've decided to continue it and take it out of Mental Health Awareness Month and just continue it all year long, bringing stories of people who are living with mental health concerns or mental illness and just share their stories with you so that you know that you are not alone. And so I'm so excited with my guest today. I would like to introduce yourself and just tell a little bit about you.
Sure. So my name is Alanna. I am a resident in Delaware. I've lived there for the majority of my life, so I say I'm from there. Um, I am 20, I'll be 27 in July, and I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder when I was 19. So I've been, you know, going through that journey of, living with that disorder and that diagnosis and finding a balance of treatment and also just acceptance of, kind of that disorder and what it gives me.
hmm Well, thank you so much for agreeing to come on and talk to us a little bit about this so people can learn. To start off with, what exactly is borderline personality disorder?
So borderline personality disorder is it is a personality disorder. So in the DSM 5, it is classified as a set of personality traits that basically are abnormal. So as far as relationships, that's really where I've seen it manifest the most for me personally.
Mhm.
So I really struggle with maintaining, creating interpersonal relationships with people, and that really stems from kind of an instability of self-identity and some impulsive behaviors, thoughts, attitudes that stem kind of from that. So, and it's I know what they have found it is triggered most by is uh, rejection or abandonment, either perceived or real.
Mhm.
So that can be a little hard for some people to understand because my perception of something might be that I'm being abandoned or rejected when it's not necessarily what the other person meant to express or imply or anything like that. So it's really very much an internal battle, like most mental disorders and mental challenges.
Yes, and is it one where because I know for me personally, it's a hard one because um like sometimes people have the like ways of behaving that are just like not pleasant, right? And you're like, oh, they're so frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
But then you find out that they have borderline personality disorder, and you want to be like, well, okay, like it's because of that. But then it's like, well, where's the line between giving an excuse and it being that, and also where's the line between just being a rude or inconsiderate person and someone with borderline personality disorder? So is there like is it due to the severity of your reaction that makes it a disorder?
Yeah, so I have found through my journey over the past, I guess, 8 years, um, that it really is a spectrum, like most other disorders we're finding. It's not a one fits all disorder, and I know that borderline personality disorder gets a pretty bad rap because people who are untreated and very much in the throes of that cyclical behavior. So I'm
Mhm.
triggered, I do something impulsive or kind of, extreme, and then come back from that and kind of, a lot of times what I've found it is like bipolar is you kind of go through a manic phase, and you kind of go through your depressive phase, depending on which of the bipolars you have or you experience. But with borderline, what I've found is it's kind of like a roller coaster of emotions throughout a day, and that's very much triggered by experiences, situations, or interactions that I have throughout a day. So it can be very difficult to work with somebody who is, or have a relationship with somebody who is not accepting of their diagnosis, not aware of it, not using coping mechanisms, not seeking any sort of treatment for it. I do think that there is a line that you get to with any sort of mental health where, okay, these are the things that I'm experiencing. These are my kind of go-to reactions, but what do I want to, what do I aim to be? And if you want to just continue to kind of be very manipulative, be very impulsive, kind of live, basically a slave to your emotions, then you're not going to be seeking treatment. You're not going to be taking any accountability for your responses and reactions to situations. So I hope that helps. I know that for a period of time, really did not take responsibility for my diagnosis. It was really kind of just an excuse, oh, I am this way because I'm very triggered by abandonment and kind of that victim role, which is comfortable and predictable because it was what I was living for a long period of time. So stepping out of that is very uncomfortable. It takes a lot of time. It also helps to have, a supportive group of people around you who are aware of, your diagnosis and kind of how it manifests, and are able to use kind of their own coping mechanisms to not really play into some of those reactions. Because if it comes to they're trying to match your energy and you're way up here, you just kind of keep building up. So that's been my experience.
No, and that was a really great explanation of it. And also the level of accountability that someone has to take for their actions, even with a mental illness. Have you ever seen the show My Crazy Ex-Girlfriend?
I don't think so. Gosh, it sounds like so many other shows that are on
Right.
the TV. Does she have borderline in it?
She does, yeah.
Okay.
So, and you don't really realize, spoiler alert, because you don't really actually find that out till the end of the season. You just think she's very erratic. But it's a TV musical, but it's really funny. It's hilarious.
I have seen that. I just haven't gone to the end. I really actually enjoyed that show.
Yeah.
Yes, very much. God, it is a roller coaster because in a lot of ways it's very exhilarating. It's very fun. You experience all of the emotions and extremes, while normal and stable life is kind of just, floating in the middle. It's nothing too, exciting, but so I know, God, I would meet somebody, romantically and be like, oh my gosh, this is like the man, and I moved across the country for a guy, just super impulsive. And really what it came down to was I needed other people to validate my self-identity. And that really stems from, that instability of self that people with borderline feel. So I would, it was great because I could, I was a chameleon, so I was able to kind of get along with everybody, but there was nothing that I could really come back to, which made it really hard. And I was listening to a woman who did a podcast on kind of her experiences with borderline. And she was talking about how important it was for her to develop a moral compass. because for so long she didn't have one, because that would be really inconvenient to turning into the person you thought that person might want,
Yeah.
if you had a set of values yourself. So that has been really pivotal, in my journey to kind of a stable, healthy life.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so interesting as someone who doesn't live at that it was almost like a foreign concept to me that people don't just have that moral compass, and that people, and like I would watch things sometimes, I got like so frustrated with characters, like, why do you not see that that's wrong? And then
Mm-hmm.
I realized that some people really truly do not see that that's wrong because of the borderline personality disorder. So I definitely like that about that show, and like,
Mm-hmm.
and other places now when I try to like see it, and I feel like the person is at that level, like, that level where you're
Yeah.
just like, I don't get why they don't get it. Because I think that's the
Yeah.
most we can all do, right? Is to try to have some level of understanding that people are viewing
Yes.
worlds completely different.
Yes. And I think it's helpful to keep in mind too, a lot of times those shows, media displays borderline personality disorder as kind of the extreme. So like we were
Yeah,
talking about, there's a spectrum. So
yeah,
they're going to kind of show it as this, whatever kind of resonates with the audience,
mhm,
and that's not always everybody's experience. And I know that sometimes they play on kind of that stigma of borderline personality disorder being very difficult.
yeah,
So
yeah. And then I wanted to ask, so, because I think you said in the beginning you didn't really try to work on your diagnosis, right? You just sort of leaned into it. How and were you diagnosed?
So I was so a funny story, and I'll try to make this as short as possible. But so I actually diagnosed myself first. I read Girl Interrupted,
Ooh, yeah,
and they had didn't watch the movie. I read the actual memoir, and she had, like, I think it was like the DSM-3 or 4 at that time when she kind of went through her whole journey. But it had the symptoms of borderline, and it said, impulsive spending, erratic moods, volatile behavior, all of those sort of things. And I really resonated with that character and that experience. But I shared it with my aunt at the time, and she said, "Oh, you don't have borderline, you're not like this other person that I know that has borderline." So fast forward to a couple of inpatient hospitalizations later, and they originally had given me a diagnosis of generalized anxiety and major depressive disorder, which I think they kind of just blanket diagnose people with
yeah,
when you
yeah.
when you get into that,
Hmm.
just to get you started. And finally, this psychiatrist in this hospital was like, "I think you have this," and so it was like very gratifying to get that validation in kind of my my own personal experience.
Hmm.
But at the same time, again, it wasn't he mentioned dialectal behavioral therapy for 2 years and being on medication, and those were things that I just wasn't. I mean, I was 19 years old, I
Yeah.
was very young, still developing brain
Hmm.
wise, and I just wasn't. My life hadn't gotten inconvenient enough at that point
Yeah.
for me to start really taking accountability for, the cards that I was given. And
Hmm.
one of my favorite sayings, it's I work in a school, and so one of the secretaries has it on her office. It's, we don't get to choose the cards that we're given, but we do get to choose how we play them.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I really do like that idea of how
Hmm.
you live your life.
Yeah. No, that's very true. Um, and I can't even imagine, what it's like having to figure out how to, keep going, but also knowing that you have like this diagnosis,
Mhm.
and trying to sort of figure out the two, especially at that age. But I did want to ask, because you mentioned medication,
Mhm.
what would the type of medications be for borderline? Because I know like with some, so like I take like an antidepressant because
Mhm.
I have depression and my brain doesn't do serotonin. So
Yeah.
what would the medication for BPD be?
So that is actually that is a good question. So a lot of people uh, find it difficult to find kind of the perfect regimen for BPD. It really depends on the individual's symptoms. So I
Mm,
know I I originally was on an antidepressant and an anti-anxiety medication that kind of helped amplify the effects of the antidepressant.
okay.
And when I was diagnosed with BPD, my psychiatrist started me on a mood stabilizer
Mm,
or an antipsychotic. And that actually has been very helpful for me. So currently, I'm on a mood stabilizer and an antidepressant and an anti anxiety. And so I take three, three pills a day. But it's been very, very helpful for me because I think one of the hardest parts about borderline personality disorder is if you're not treating some of that neurological, pattern in your brain that makes you experience these huge emotions and have mood swings and feel very impulsive, then you're really not able to, take in and digest and then use some of those dialectal behavior therapy, coping skills. You're not able to think rationally. So for me, the medication and the behavioral therapy has been, they have to work together.
mhm.
So yeah, so it's kind of getting you as close to a baseline as possible, and then you're able to kind of go into it and look at some of those behaviors that go along with it.
Yeah, that magic combo of therapy and medication is, when it's done right, it's very,
Yes.
very helpful. Now,
Yeah.
I know a lot of times people, they worry the most about having a mental illness because it's going to interrupt their life. They won't be
Mhm.
able to be successful or get things done. Um,
Mhm.
how have you been able to navigate having borderline personality disorder while also still being successful in doing what you want with life?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think one of the great things about these newer generations coming in is we're really talking about mental health and how prevalent it is. I'm not sure about the statistics, but I know that there are far more people who have a mental health diagnosis than people think. So it's a lot more common. I know my personal experience. So I didn't really get serious about my mental health until I had my son. Because for a long time it was just impacting, I thought it was just impacting me.
Mm,
So when I had my son, I actually, and I have a dual diagnosis, so I'm also in recovery. So I self medicated for a long time.
mm,
So when I got sober and joined AA, I started really taking my mental health serious as well. So those two things are very close together for me. But what my maintenance looks like is um, doing what I need to do to stay sober, taking my medication daily, seeing a therapist at least twice a month, checking in with my psychiatrist often. And we kind of touched on how difficult it is to find, a regimen that works for you. So anybody who is suffering from, untreated BPD and looking to get better, I would say just try to be as patient as you can in finding what works for you.
mm,
And really working on my communication with the people in my life who are my support. So, educating them, being honest myself with how I'm feeling. But what that has given me, so since I've been on that journey, is I've been able to go back to school. So when I was untreated BPD and, self-medicating, I tried to go to school 4 different times. And I dropped out every time. I think I usually would just make it about 2 weeks. So I've been able to go back to school. I'm now considered a sophomore, and I'm going back for my bachelor's in psychology. So that's huge.
Yeah.
I work full time. I used to be the type of person who would cycle through 6 jobs in 6 months. I mean, I never stayed anywhere. I've now been with a school district for 2 years, working with them. I've built back up relationships with people. I've tried the dating thing. That's it's a little complicated. I know that I still need to work on me before I can introduce somebody else into that. So right now I'm really just focusing on my son, my family, my recovery, my job, and more than anything, I would just say, like, working through all of that, trudging, the path to recovery of mental health, addiction, whatever it is, on the other side, there's this life that you never thought was possible. You never thought that you could have, and you never knew was going to make you happy. Because I know that when I was sick and untreated, I would chase after anything that shined, and it never really made me happy. So I found a serenity and a peace in recovery, and also, recovery from mental health. So that would be my testament to that.
No, that's great. I love that. And, again, thank you so much for your transparency and sharing so much about you. I know it's not always easy, but it's definitely helpful to those out there who think they might be alone or going through it by themselves. So I appreciate your time so much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I would say you are not alone.
Thank you. All right. And thank you to those who are watching. And if you haven't seen the previous videos, check those out. There's a whole series of these. Thank you. Bye-bye.